I say hello, Bren. Good morning. Thanks for being here. And I would like you to give a short intro for those who don't know you.
Thank you for having me. Yes, so my name's Brennand Pierce. I've been doing robotics, luckily now for 20 years professionally. I've always loved sci-fi, I've always loved robotics, and I was in a very good situation where about 20 years ago, a city I was living in England, did the first robotics lab at Bristol University. And it changed my life for the better. I was always using robotics as a hobby, but once this lab opened and they did the first masters in the UK, I'm like, I know what I want to do. So I went there for 2 years on a part-time course, learning robotics, everything from DSP low level up to AI. And from there, I've luckily been doing this for 20 years.
This is this is I always like people, and we talked about this a little bit earlier, that has this kind of enthusiasm and dynamic and power and the ability to be so infectious with the things that you like. So I already feel that this going to be a very nice episode. You already mentioned a few things, and we come to this later on. But I always ask and ask my guests if they would be so kind to go a bit back in time and tell me a bit about upbringing and education, so the people you've been surrounded and inspired. And yeah, I would be very happy if you can share a few moments here.
Yeah, definitely. I've always been like mathematical, always like tinkering. My dad was a mechanical engineer, so we're always building things at the house, at school. I love maths, I love science. I really liked what was called, I don't know, HR. I can't remember what it is even called, where you're building wooden work, building all these things with my hands. Um, well, I think the best decisions I ever made was when I was about 17, looking at what you want to do for university. A lot of my friends would like, I'll be rude about them, would do like decide to go English or geography. And I'm just like, all right, what pays well? And you're like, computer science pays well. What skill sets do I have? Very good at maths, love science, computer science. I used to use computers a lot, wasn't like one of these coder kids who spent like 20 hours a day coding, but it's like, I think this would be a good career. And it was probably the best decision I ever made, and for the entrepreneurial side, I remember getting my first job at 12, doing a paper round. Within 4 years, I had about 4 or 5 paper rounds at the same place. They started to pay me just to retain me because I was late every day for my paper round. When I turned up, there'd be about 3 or 4 people who were sick or leaving. There was four, whole round sitting there before school, and they're like, "I'll pay you 20 quid to do them." I'm like, "This is perfect." So even by the time I was 40, I was probably making about £100 a week, which is a lot for a school kid. And I've always had that drive to, all right, go out there, make money, do what it takes. Yeah, I think by the time I was 16, I had like working in a pet shop after school and at the weekends working in a garden centre. So I always had that drive just to work a lot. I enjoy working, and it's just like, all right, I also like money.
I really like that you have this because this is a perfect combination, right? I mean, now it seems obvious, but looking back then, but first the drive of I like money and I like working, so I like to do things, doesn't matter what it is, right? And but also the it seems like very, as you said, very intentional to study and not what how do I need to figure out life. It's like, look, I'm very good at math, right? And here I have this idea of this or this will to do something, to build something with my hand. So, and here combining both things, very interesting that you very early on, at 16, 17, like intentionally. So I would like to do this because I know it pays well, and I like getting paid well because, or I like money because it enables me to do other things, right? And it's very interesting. And I like the way you described the paper round, because this is it's very often very something like normally to do if you in this entrepreneurial spirit, like how can I make money? I'm very young, so I'm not. There's not too many options you can do, right? When you're that little.
Exactly.
And is that something that came from an internal drive, or was that something that you said your father was a mechanical engineer? Do you think that was also something that you saw that somebody not necessarily teaching you, but where you could copy or where you could learn? And
I think the entrepreneurial aspects of it. What didn't come from external, it came very much from me. I wouldn't say I'm not that materialistic, or I didn't, I'm not really material driven. I don't have a Ferrari, I don't have a Gucci bag and all of these things. But at the early age, let's say my teens, I like computer games, and, I want to buy computer games. And back then they were about 50 quid. So, all right, if I go to work hard, I could go and buy, a Super NES or a computer game. I love mountain biking. So if you want a good mountain bike, you had to go and make money.
Mm.
And I think even now, I'm not intrinsically out there with your like fancy watches or anything like that. It's like I like going snowboarding, I like going on holiday, all these take money.
I like how open you speak about those things, and I think especially the fact that you make a difference between I like money, but not because I like money because I can buy a watch, even though a watch or a bag is also good, right? But to enable to do things that you like, and so especially in Europe or in Germany, it's not forbidden, but they don't speak so much about making money and why you need to make money and what you can afford with that. Versus you saying very openly, I mean, it's very logical, right? I would like to have a computer game. I would like to have a mountain bike, and if nobody's giving it to me, I need to get it myself. So I do need to work, and this lesson learned very early on. I have this podcast also because I would like to learn and see and observe, and I have a little one now. I think I say this now in every episode. And I would like to understand what are the things that I need to teach her because sometimes you're not aware of that. And so thanks for this
Yeah, I
very
think
early
it.
on
Yeah, I
lesson.
think European do have a taboo about talking about money. You don't want to flaunt it, and especially I think this is a detriment, let's say, tangent, like in Germany, to raise money. People don't like to show off money, so it's just like, where do you find money for startups? Well, that's a different conversation for later.
Yeah, true, true. Entering university, you were mentioning in the intro that one of the first robotic labs emerged from Bristol, and that was something that caught your eye, and you here again being very active and said, okay, now I got something, I got a goal, I got a target, right? Tell me more about this.
Yeah, so you have to go back a bit. So at university, I studied computer science, 3 years there. I still semi-entrepreneurial there back in the early 2000s. So I was making a lot of websites for companies or just like on the, side hustle of just making websites. You do computer science, people come to you, it's like, I'm a garden center, I'll pay you £500 just to do a static web page. Even did some e-commerce before Shopify, where you have to go in, write in PHP and a database, some for a fishing shop, these sorts of things. Really, wasn't one of these true entrepreneurs, but it did give me beer money at university. Then, unfortunately for me, or I should say, luckily for me, when I graduated, it was just after the dot-com bust. So when you come out of university with 0 years experience, right in like 2002, when the tech industry is on a massive downtrend, it was incredibly hard. Well, impossible, literally, for me to get a job. Who wants to enjoy a fresh grad when there's all these other people unemployed? Um, so then, for the next 3 years, I built up my first company there. Piggybacking onto the website I was doing, and actually randomly, a company I did a website for, they were doing call centers. And when you go in there, it's all done on paper and Excel spreadsheets. And I'm like, well, I know PHP, I know databases, front ends, everything. So I ended up writing what would nowadays be called a SaaS company, automating call centers. Of all things, not sexy, not but it paid the bills. It paid pretty well actually towards the end, and it's a very interesting job. It's still a computer scientist, but in this, my hobby at home was robotics, and one of the biggest life-changing experience for me was literally a TV show. Just watching TV, saw a mini documentary about these Robo One, and they're like a foot or 30, 40 centimeter high humanoid robot competitions in Japan, where you have these fighting robots that like fight in the ring and things like that. And I was just like, wow, that is amazing. Got straight onto the internet. Half an hour later, you could find the store to buy it, and I just ordered one. And then for the next year, I was just like obsessed with this thing, changed all the electronics out, started programming it, but actually properly started learning C++, basic and electronics to make this thing better. And then that was when suddenly this hobby goes to, let's say, professional. That is when I suddenly saw this Bristol Robotics Lab. And at that point, I already had oscilloscopes. I had all this, my living room was turning into a robotics lab. And as soon as I saw that and went around it, that is when you suddenly see my 3D printers, all this CNC equipment, and you're like, all right, this is what I need. And then that was when I decided to start doing 1 day a week. Luckily, it was my own company, so I could take a Wednesday off, and I think I was doing like 7 a.m. until 11 p.m. at night. They condensed everything into 1 day, and I just loved it. I got a ridiculously good score because I'm just there doing, compared to, let's say, my undergraduate, which I was doing it very much for money, because it's like, oh, computer scientists pay well. This is robotics. I just loved it. So I'm just there at the weekend. I'm in the lab. I'm just doing all of this. You had like the inverted pendulum problem that they just wanted us to use, control. But then I started applying fuzzy logic. I was trying all these other different control methods to control it. And I just fell in love with it. I think I've said this to other people, but it's like when you're designing SaaS software or just any software, you press a button and you get a number or something change on the screen. No one appreciates all this database, this infrastructure. You type something into Google, you don't realize this search goes off to millions of servers around the world. Whereas robotics is still the same problem, but you press go, it physically gets up and starts walking. It just feels it's the same technology, but it's so much more enjoyable for me to see the robot walk than it would be for me to write the Google search algorithm, which is probably more complex.
So the seeing the fruits of your labors, the reward in a physical state is something that we lack because and it's very hard to see progress here, right? As you said, with a robot, you do see now it has more capabilities or it has more physical how do you say this capabilities. Now it has an arm, now it has a leg, it had two arms, two legs, eyes, now it can walk, it could drive, right? So there's real progress going versus you're still at the screen, you're looking at the screen, and now maybe there's a button more, as you said, there's more magic happening behind the screen, but this physical doing something with the hands, it's also something that is I think maybe for the brain a bit more rewarding for some people at least.
Yeah, I think that also ties into me personally, my different skill sets. Why I'm probably a pretty good roboticist is like growing up with my dad, very hands-on. When I was like 17 to like 20, very much into cars. So I was building kit cars, welding, doing all the boy racer things that you do, putting the big, loud, obnoxious exhaust on your car, all these things that I just love physically doing. So, one of the things actually, and this ties in with the robotics at university when I was doing my computer scientist, I've always been pretty good at like visualizing things, and I actually got very interested in like 3D animation. One of my final year's project was actually doing a Gundam 3D animation of a robot. And that was one of the areas where I was actually thinking about, contemplating going into, which was like 3D animation, because I just physically loved on the screen, making things, making the move, doing all the kinematics of the robot, getting it to walk and all these sorts of things. And that also, in a way, tied me into the robotics, because once I actually bought like some of these kits, I then had this skill set where I knew how to effectively build things in CAD, and then that tied in nicely. As soon as I got like SolidWorks, I'm like, all right, I've been used to like 4 or 5 years of Maya. Now, when you switch to SolidWorks, like, it's very similar, but I can now press a button, 3D print it, and it physically appears in my hand.
The wave of 3D printers, let's say, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, was that, so you were really in that time and really saw, okay, there's things happening at the moment. And as you said, with the package that you ordered from Japan and being able to assemble that. So were you among those who ordered the first 3D printers that were kind of occasioned this kind of wave? Because I think it seems nowadays almost everyone has access to these kind of things, right?
I think I was probably one of the very few people that ever got to see and use it. One of the reasons I wanted to go back to university was we went, to the open day, and they had like, I think it's about £250,000 or dollars, big machine the size of a phone booth. This is before you could get your maker bot for like £1,000. And claim to fame, I even changed the university printing policy because at the time they're like, students can print for free, and then they realised I spent about £10,000 in a year 3D printing, and then they're like, all right, students start having to pay for their printing because I'm there every day, just like, yeah.
This is the reason why we can't have nice things, because there's
Exactly.
some people exploiting those things. For the better, I guess.
Yeah, and people now, luckily, like I think in our office we have two 3D printers. They cost £1,000, and they were so much better than the 3D printing that was $250,000 15 years ago.
The time in the lab, so you went then back to university, is something that it seems like really you enjoyed really and took fully, advantage of that. But what happened with your entrepreneurial mindset or business during
Yeah,
that
so
time?
great question. So luckily, our biggest customer wanted to buy my company. They just, they wanted the software because they were paying me a very nice royalty for it, or let's say a license. And they could see the opportunity to take that software and go to sell it to their competitors.
Mm.
I think this also ties in with, like, let's say Silicon Valley, Europe's mindset. I think if I was in a different environment, I'm there on my, like, in my entrepreneurial life, I'm there on my own. Most of my friends are working in bars, shops, just a normal 9 to 5, and I'm just the odd one out there, apart from one or two other people who are doing more, let's say, normal entrepreneurial tasks. Like, if I was in like Silicon Valley, or I think an eco hub, I could have been the person to be like, all right, I'm selling to the one or two customers this bespoke software, which was automating call centers. If I had a mentor or something, they should be like, all right, take some of that money, go, who are their competitors? Go and sell to that. But because I'm just there, like, all right, they're buying my software. They effectively helped. Well, it's SaaS, so they were, the money I was getting, I was putting back into the software. It was without that ecosystem of realizing. Bear in mind, I was like 24 at the time. That you could just go, search the internet. Who else is doing call centers? Go and sell to them. And I could have built, probably a £50 million company just with that software. But at the time, they offered me a very nice exit for me that allowed me to then go to the next stage, which is then professionally going and doing traveling the world to different robotics labs.
One of the reasons why I have this podcast is also because missing mentor earlier in life. There's some people that have the advantage and that have the luck. I think today it's even the best time to have to be there, because you don't need to have like a physical person that is influencing you, a parent, some teachers, some uncles or aunts, whatever, right? Right now you have access to books, to audiobooks, to podcasts like this one here, hopefully, and you can train yourself, you can mentor yourself, you can take notes, and seeking this kind of mentorship that, as you said, was missing during that time, because, as you said, only a few conversations would have been necessary to put this into work.
Exactly. I think back then, entrepreneurship, I don't think it was really in the lexicon, or people didn't talk about it. If I was that person now, I could be like, go onto the internet. There's YouTube. There's obviously great podcasts like this. There's so much of this information out there. You know, age myself, back then you didn't even have YouTube, and podcasts didn't exist. So, Amazon, you didn't even have Amazon Kindle. So in theory, I could have gone down to the library, started looking at business books and started reading. But a lot of the time, I'd be sat at home, it didn't really have much work on. There wasn't much bugs to fix for my clients. So how do I get, as a 24-year-old without the internet, so how do I get other clients? Do I just literally pick up the phone and just start dialing numbers, which I guess you should do, but without that push, let's say, of a third-party accountability, I was much more relying on word of mouth and people coming to me. So some days I'd just be sat there twiddling my thumbs, be like, so how do I get more customers?
Mhm. And even, I mean, these, you were just mentioning something that is very hard to do even today, right? There's a lot of startups that are trying to solve that niche and that problem of cold calling and getting customers and customer acquisition. And what does it even mean? How do you do it? There's some accounts on social media that you can follow just for that, landing pages, cold DMs, systems, agents, right? So you're absolutely right. And I think you're doing pretty well for yourself. So you don't need to look back on those things. But it doesn't seem like you're that kind of person anyways.
No, I depends if you want to skip forward. I think you are right. One of the biggest breakthroughs or hurdle was my first robotics company going to a Google Entrepreneur Week. Day one, speaking to one of the mentors there, they're just like, to me and my old business partner then, they're like, so how many customers you spoke to? We're like about three. He was, and this is in Munich, and he was just like, right, I don't want you back here in this room until you have 100 interviews. Go to the city, and you're just like, what? He's like, he helped us write a questionnaire, and this is we're looking at hotels. He's like, all right, I want you to go to 100 hotels in the next 3 days, jump in an Uber, and go. And you're like, okay. And it was probably the best decision we made because it's like the first one or two, you just bit like at the front counter, be like, hi, can I speak to the manager? And you're very unsure, you're not into the flow. But by the time you're at the 50, you just rock in there, you're like, hi there, can I speak to the manager? And then you're like, you could get into that sales pitch, most of them are bringing like, I'm busy, but some of them are just quite interesting, like, oh, you're a robotics company. We'll give you 5 minutes, and it's like getting over that hurdle. And you do need that push, I think. Now I've been doing it a long time. I'm quite comfortable. I know what to do. I have a different, let's say, persona where you just get into that business where you just like, all right, let's cold call. Or nowadays it's LinkedIn or some other means. It's like, all right, you have less of a hurdle. And you just like, I know I just need to do it. And I know if I do it, it works. I just need to actually get off my ass and do it. Which I think when you're the first time found, you're a bit like unsure. You're like, oh, well.
I knew the moment I spoke to you in London at the Humanoid Summit that this was going to be a great podcast episode because I could feel and sense that this is exactly the lessons that I want to get out of the guests that I'm having. And you're totally right. The especially the customer approach, right? And especially for people in tech, deep tech, with a deep expertise through academia, they don't have this kind of contact with the outside world, with the industry. But yeah, I mean, except from the moments that you get VC monies and people see the potential in you, you do need to go, as you said, over this hurdle, right? And you do need to push yourself out of the comfort zone. And hi, my name is Bren. So, but as you said, it's like going to the gym after the 50th time. I know what to do. I know how it feels like to get a no. It's not that hard. It doesn't hurt. So yeah, and this kind of reps is definitely something that people need to put into. I just realized that this is still something that so many people are afraid of, right? This fear of having this.
And I think if we go back, chronological order, this is where a lot of my, let's say, big breaks have just come through this, having to step out of your comfort zone and take risks. So, what we're talking about, when I graduated my master's from Bristol Robotics Lab, there's no robotics really existed in the world at the time that I was interested in. It was all like KUKA arms or AMRs or just, that are still doing a line following. None of this really interests me. So even though I wanted to do another company or go and do something cool, nothing existed. So it's like, all right, I guess I'm going to have to stay in academia. So then, yet again, jump out of your comfort zone. After writing my thesis, I had like 100 academic papers. So I literally just emailed every single person on those papers with my thesis and be like, hello, I want to come and work in your lab. And luckily or unluckily, because I had money at the time, Chris Atkinson from CMU just emailed me back like, yes, I have no money, but, and I literally in 2 emails, he's like, if you come work for free, you could come to my lab for 3 months for free, and then we can work something out. And then I just emailed back and never spoken to him on the phone. 3 emails. He's like, yeah, meet at this door in 3 weeks' time in Pittsburgh. And that was it. And I'm like, I haven't spoken to him. It's been like about 4 lines of communication. He's like, come to Pittsburgh in September on the 14th or something like that to this room. And I'm like, I guess I'm going to, I've never spoken to him, never been to Pittsburgh. You're like, I guess I'm going to Pittsburgh in 3 weeks. And he's just like, literally, he's just like CC'd his assistant. And she just emailed back like, oh yeah, you just need to apply at the university. I'll help you to get your visa form. And that was it. Never even spoke to him on the phone or anything. And then fly to Pittsburgh, and then you're just literally standing outside a random room in a department in a different country. You look at the door, and Chris is just like, "Hi there, welcome. Here's a desk. Here's another PhD student. Have fun. Any questions he can answer." And then he's off to do his thing, and you're like, "I guess now I'm in America doing well, what not even a PhD, just like working, helping out in a university."
This is the exact reason why I have this. Well, I love this kind of conversation because conversations. This is it shows that if you make the attempt, as you said, you wrote 100 emails, right? And just one. It just needs to be one, right? That hits. But if you don't write those emails, there is no chance of hitting those. What happened out of the story? You being there
No,
for a while.
yeah. So towards the, being there, turn up and there's like a Sarco's full-size humanoid hydraulic robot. Started to work on there. Technically, I was there for a project with Samsung. After about 2.5 months, obviously, I did well. They liked me. I was very useful for them, let's say. Long story short, none of them were happy to pay me, but eventually Samsung or CMU started to pay me. And I was there for a whole year because it was basically a year-long project. And this is how you like connect those dots retrospectively. You also have to be pushy, or let's say, take. Well, it sounds bad, take, but you want to be slightly forceful. There, it's like in academia, if you write a paper, you get to go to conferences. I spent about a couple of weeks persuading Chris, because I'd worked there for free for 3 months, and virtually all the department, there's about 6 other colleagues, they're all going to Korea for a humanoid conference. And I'm like, Chris, I worked for 3 months for free. I would love you to take me to Korea. Obviously, he said no to start with, but I think after about 2 weeks of annoying him, I think he finally gave in and let me go along with them. And that was basically my first, let's say, proper international robotics conferences. And going there with a lab that's very well known. Chris was very well connected. The PhD colleagues there were very knew everyone, and they basically introduced me to people in the community. And probably Chris wanted to get rid of me, but he was there going to all these professors like, you should hire Bren. I don't know if he's trying to get rid of me or, but luckily he went around, he's introducing me to these other professors. And luckily that turned into a PhD in Munich, where I met Gordon Chang, my professor. Is like, yeah, I'm just setting up a new lab, a humanoid lab. He knew Chris very well. Chris was like, you should hire Bren, and then I ended up in Munich at TUM for like, I think 6 years then, building humanoid robots, working with the DLR, building everything from quadricopters to disabled wheelchairs to like working on the PR2 and the iCub and everything.
This is such a great story. So, and thank you for sharing that one. I really like the way you said. So he was taking everyone with him, and then, hey, I got another idea. It's very strange, but yeah, I mean, maybe you're taking and also like and here, this is, I think, one of the traits that makes a good entrepreneur, right? Or at least someone who is increasing the chances of succeeding with its goals, right? He said no, or he said maybe, or he said whatever he said, right? But you said I would like to go, right? So, and I gotta make this happen. And this is what when I talk to people, then I say you need to make things happen, right? They are not happening on their own. Sometimes they do, sometimes you get lucky, but very often you can increase your luck by making things happen on your own, right? And here, pushing and not accepting no for an answer definitely helped you to secure that spot, and that led to the PhD role that you took in Munich, right?
I think it's also that true. It's just working hard, because I love robotics. I do it all the time. I'm in the lab. Actually, it's back then. I turn up about 11 in the morning, and I'm there until like 2, 3 in the morning. Just working 7 days a week. just loving it. You're like, you got $1 million humanoid robot there. You're working on a secret project with an international company that there's like 150 people working on a humanoid. And then I'm there as just like a fresh grad, well, fresh master student, like, wow, I get to play with all of these. And especially my role was perfect for me. I like to say I had no skill sets or no responsibility, but then them all, because I'm just there. The PC, my PC was connected to the robot, and then you have all these different people from the control engineers to vision, and they would just like give me their code. They're like, I want to run this on the robot, and I was just there like piecing together everyone's code to run all the experiments because I'm just there plugged into the robot, just making it work, and it just worked very well for me. Like talking to the mechanical engineers about like we see this problem, you know, taking these academic code and actually just like trying to combine them all together to a singular system. So it worked, it just taught me everything from low level DSPs and electronics to like high level mechanical design and everything in between. I just loved it. I was just in my element.
This is what a roller coaster. The roller coaster is going up the majority of time in the story, but I do think that, and we all know that there's always some bumps. Um, the time, so that means we could speak in German though, right?
Nine. Kleine Deutsch.
Mm. It's amazing you being there in Munich for a couple of years. You said 6 years, right?
I think I was in Munich for 7+ years.
Crazy. The I talk to a lot of founders, not only through the podcast but in general, and the jump. This is a recurring topic here on the podcast. The jump from academia to the industry is something that a lot of people struggle with, and there's a lot of things to be learned. Again, that is out of your comfort zone. Again, but for you, you had here you had a bit of advantage, right? And not only because you were selling. Papers from the age of 12 or delivering, but also having this entrepreneurial mindset and having a business earlier on, right before having a PhD, having a business, combining two elements that are very hard to conquer into one. I think this gives you definitely one, a crazy advantage, right? Maybe you can tell us a bit how was
Yeah,
it?
I think for Germans, I think compared to England, they're a lot better, but then they still have a not as good for this transfer of academic into industrial startups. You go through the exit program, which is basically a year master in, or seems for me the outside, because I never even applied for it. Seems like a year's let me from an academic teach you how to be an entrepreneur. You're in this, still in the university, and you're still in this little bubble. They try and go to a whiteboard, and they're like, let me do all of this like canvases and all these sorts of academic way. And like in a way it sort of cushions you from the real world. I didn't even apply for that. I just like jumped in 2 feet. Let's start building robots. Let's go and talk to customers. And I think I did a lot better than most of the academics. But at the same time, I could sit here and it could be like big bold and say it was good. But at the same day, like the first day, I should be nice to the university because they do have very good resources there. They give you a desk. You're in this maker space. You have this resources. You do have a good network, so it's very good in that regard. But day one, even though I had my own company before, being entrepreneurial, day one, you sit down at this desk. There's nothing on it. They don't give you a monitor. You've got the old laptop that I basically took from my PhD because it's now 7 years old. And you just like sit there. You're like, what do I do now? There isn't even a monitor on my desk. It's I have a company. What's the company name? How do I register it? Well, you just sit there for like 2 days, just sitting in the chair, just like, so I've got to do something. What to do? Let me start Googling it.
And I think this is when it comes to all the LLMs out there at the moment, this is one of the democratization of this, right? Being able, first, yeah, this little push and the mindset we were talking earlier about mentoring, right? Even having access to that is not helping you in any regards because you don't know what you don't know, right? I mean, today with the LLMs, you might have the opportunity to, I would like to open a business, what is necessary? And then it gives you better answers than Google. I mean, yeah, right? In a way of, oh, you should consider this and that and those and these steps. But how did you get out of this position on sitting on the desk and then doing something? How was that for you?
Yeah, luckily, even I said the Exist program I didn't apply to. There's still the Technical University of Munich in Germany still had the entrepreneurship department. So they had like 20 people there working with all sorts of things. They even had their own investment arm. And there you just like go and chat to people, and they did have some workshops. So they did have some mentoring, which was very, very useful to get going. In a way, it's retrospectively it was very good, but at the same time it's probably not how you start a successful startup. Some of the examples was you're sitting in a room with about 20 other PhD graduates that want to take their PhD or interested in taking their PhD work and commercializing it. And then you're doing like whiteboarding sessions of, you have this technology, where can you apply it? Which is actually the reverse of what you want to be doing. You want to be looking for, here's a problem, what technology fits. So for example, I'd built humanoid robots. They're like, retrospectively, it would have been quite cool, but they're like, we decided that's probably not commercially viable. I did actually make some really cool AMRs. Worked out incredibly well for me in the end, Bear Robotics and things like that. But there you're like, all right, here's the AMR. What could we go and problems to go and solve? And then the reason why it's good and bad, it did get me out of that rut thinking about the company. But there you're sitting with other PhD students, from physicists to people that had done like, I don't know, some other thing, and a guy from Entrepreneur Center thinking at a whiteboard, what problems can we solve? When, as we were talking about earlier, what they should have done is like, Bren, go, here's a trade show, here's a trade show. We have a connection at BMW, we have a connection at Siemens. Go to Siemens, go to BMW, go to Philips, go to these companies, and advice to the German government, or to me, but they should have these connections. And instead of doing a whiteboard with an entrepreneur in residence at Munich, I should have gone to BMWs, I could have gone to Siemens, and then asked them, what problems, these are my technologies, how could I use them in your company? Would have been a much better retrospectively way to go.
Or if you still like to keep it in that academic bubble, it would have been nice if there's a connection between those where the company is just delivering like problems. There's a list of problems that we have. There's a list of problems that we have. There's a list of problems that we have,
Exactly,
right?
yes.
So now we're opening up the whiteboard, and it says, okay, these are mechanical engineering problems that we have in face, and we don't have a solution for that. These are problems for XYZ industry that we can't fix, right? And then now seeing, is that something that we have any skills or capabilities in any forms to solve those problems, right? Because then there's a real need, there's a real pull. And now we can see, as you said, the reverse of, I have a technology, where can I apply it? You see the problem, where can I solve it? And
Exactly.
but you made it out of the whiteboard room, right? So maybe now it's time to talk about what you guys doing today.
Yeah, no, so do you want to talk about my current company, or because I had 3 companies between now and then? Which one do you want? How much time have you got?
I do think that it is worth to spending a few moments on the companies in between, even though let's put the big portion of what you guys doing today.
Perfect. Yeah. So Outer Tomb, I did okay. We founded Robotize. It was a massive lesson learned for me on the goods and bad. Like, we designed a robot for hotels. We found a problem, which was hotels wanted to get rid of minibars. You're like, all right, we could design a minibars on wheels that goes to your room. Customers loved it. It could, in theory, it's a great product market fit. The problem is, it turned out 2 years later, just not commercially viable. What's a better solution? Putting a vending machine in the reception, or one of these little tuck shops that they now have. You're trying to solve, you're not really doing that Elon Musk 0 to 1. You're like, mini bars in a room, we could just solve that, instead of taking a back look and be like, actually the problem is someone in the hotel and they want some candy, they want a beer. Why have one in every single room when you could just have a mini shop, which is now what they're doing at the reception? But I learned how to like set up a company, hire some staff, find a problem, find customers, build a robot. Just a wrong product market fit. And I think Munich's a lot better now, but it's also location. At the time, there wasn't many other robotic company. There wasn't that much of an entrepreneur spirits in Munich. I think it's a lot better now. But then if we jump forward, all of what I'd been doing for the last 15 years or 10, 15 years at that time, jump forward to a very successful company. So I took all that learning, my ability to make robots. I'd obviously spent 2 years in Germany, founding Robotize, figure out how to find customers, how to build a robot, all these learning curves. So then when I moved to Silicon Valley to found Bear Robotics with John and Feng Wei, I knew how to already go out customers. I knew how to build robots. I knew, it was basically the same robot, just a different user case. Also, lesson learned, like very good founders, like founder fit, like John and Feng Wei were just like the best, brightest people I ever met, incredibly good Google level programmers. I just came in like they knew programming. John was very good at raising money and had a restaurant, so he had product market fit already. I was very good at building robots. So it's like, wow, this is like a dream team. And it just like so much easier the second time round is easier. And now I joke, this is my third robot company, and I feel like I'm doing it on a cheat code because I've done all the hard lessons. I know what doesn't work. I know what does work. I just need to, do it for the third time. So you're like, all right. And that's where, some of the big lessons to learn, for example, the first year of Robotize, me and my business partner, Ed, we didn't even, well, I was writing code because that's what I like to do, building robots, but we didn't go and hire, we didn't go and fundraise. We spent literally the first year going around talking to hundreds of different companies in different sectors, from Walmart to McDonald's to like construction engineers, all these things would be like, as you said, we had a technology which is these foundational models. Where can we apply it instead of just like the first product market fit that we thought and just let's just go for it? We actually spent like a year really deep diving and thinking about what is the user case, what is the return on investment, everything like that. Before actually hiring our first engineer and raising any money, because I knew what dead end it could be. And that's primarily in robotics. It costs so much to build these robots and sell and install. If you just choose a market where it's only going to ship like 200 units, there is a dead company.
The lessons learned, and I think there's so much to learn here from different aspects, but especially now with foundation model, a lot of people are trying to solve a lot of problems. But the problem that you have, and if you speak to a lot of customers, you will understand that there is a difference between all the possibilities and tangible outcomes and action results, right? Or actionable results. So just focusing on 2 or 3 use cases is totally enough. When there's volume, right? Versus we could solve that. Yeah, you could, right? But the question is, which one will you solve? And I think there's a good lesson here.
I think it's also I think there's some different ways of doing it. I like the easy way. So you get like Physical Intelligent, great company, great founders. Theirs is like, we want to solve AGI robotics. We're going to have a product, a couple of years' time. What I've seen work well for myself might be different for other people. I found that it's much easier when you look and be like, here's some open source, like OpenVLA, or some open source software, or academic papers that are working 80% of the time. You're like, the technology's there. It just needs some really good engineers to make it a product, rather than like, I think I need to do some groundbreaking work in foundational models. And it's also, what can we do now? Because I spent about 4 or 5 months in this exploration phase, really fixated on shelf stacking supermarkets. So I started designing robots, looking at the software stack. I still think it's a great idea, but then you look at all these problems in a sequential. It's like recognizing 50,000 different objects, working around other customers, all of these complexities. You're like, that is where, in a way, Kinisi wants to go. But then you want to go back and be like, well, what is the minimum viable thing you can actually do? And that's where we were just like, check to everyone. It's like boxes. Can we just pick up boxes, move your boxes around, putting them down, and totes? So like just picking up totes, putting things into totes, taking them out, moving them around. And it's like, all right, can we just get a robot that does that 24/7? Even with such a simplistic robot, you could probably sell like 20,000 of them. And that also just leads on to like that foundational technology, like perfect moving boxes around. And now we could go up the intellectual value chain to one day being a shelf stacking robot, one day work in your house. But if you can't do this, picking up boxes or random items and putting it into a box, and the key is reliably 99.9%, and also doing it at a human pace. Most videos you see are sped up by 4x. We're still like half the speed of a person picking up boxes. You know, the goal is in a year, can you just pick up a box anywhere, put it down somewhere else? Sounds easy, turns out to be quite hard.
And especially if you talk to customers, so when I was when I'm talking to customers, they're looking for the most complex task because here's where the most value is, right? So, and here there's two problems to apply. First, you need to convince the customer. I mean, I know that you can solve these kind of problems, and you would like to jump to this kind of problems because they're very hard and you don't know how to fix those problems. But we do need to start somewhere to bring us to this level where we can solve this, right? So you need to convince the customer that this is the right to do it, but also convincing yourself that this is the right to do it. As you said, with physical intelligence, this is where they would like to land, right? But you need to get here somehow. And using your not customers but partners, like not having customers but partners that help you raising those the technology and the skill set to be able to solve those complex partners, so can be good for both, for the customer because he needs to have the internal intelligence as well, but also for you and your team to be able to bring the product to that kind of 99.999%.
I think, yeah, you're 100% true. And then you also have to look as a founder, what is your skill set and how, I don't think myself, some people, you look at Brett at Figure, somehow he's incredibly good at raising money. Unfortunately, I don't have that ability to go out there with a pitch deck and imagination and be like, can you give me 500 million on nothingness? I think it's more my reality of like, I could just go instead. I'd love to be able to go raise 500 million on a pitch deck. Unfortunately, my network and, it just doesn't seem to be possible. Whereas I'm much more like, I'm very good at just building physical robots and getting to do. And I think that's just this, you just have to lead into it. Like, okay, I can't go and raise 500 million on a pitch deck. What I can do is I can go and build a physical robot very easily, very quick, and get it to solve a very simplistic task. And then just start land and expand with this, so you have to also lead into that. Some people look at Magic Leap, the glasses somehow spent 6-7 years raising billions and never shipped. It's like, I like just building robots and shipping robots, and I'm good at that. So you have to also lead into, as a founder, what you're good at and how can you outcompete the competitors.
And also the improvement that you can do over time are much easier if you start shipping.
100%. And you only realize what the customer really wants when you ship. So even take Bear Robotics, shipped 25,000 robot. The first robot we built, Survey, shipped about 10,000 units. It turned out it's not even the right robot. Everyone, when we shipped it, and this is where, unfortunately for robotics, it's hard to build prototypes and ship. When we first started to build that robot and ship, it was very much, when we do the prototype first 50, our primary market was Japan because we had SoftBank, Asian restaurants, and they were like very small mom and pop. They're like, we want this small robot to deliver sushi and things. So we built this robot, sent 10,000 of them. But then our lesson learned there was we shipped to all these much bigger establishments, like American, like steakhouses wanted it. And they're like, we would take 20 of these, but it's just too small. And then you suddenly realize we designed a robot that's very good for these small Asian restaurants, but it turned out the market is so much bigger for much bigger American or like bigger establishments or hotels, airport lounges. They're like airport lounges, like we take 40 of them, and you're suddenly like, but they want to be much bigger. So then we designed the Survey 2, Survey Plus. It ships so much more. So you get that, like, if you're not going out to the customers, you don't know what their actual specification, what is that payload, what is the battery life, what do they really want to pay for. That's why you have to get out early.
This is a great episode. Thanks for being here. Thanks for taking the time. Maybe you can be more concrete as you like. What you guys where you guys are at today, what you guys are
Mhm.
shipping, and what's the idea? What's the vision?
Yeah, so the vision is still to get to like this AGI robot that could, single foundational model that's embodied in different form factors. What we're at the moment is we have this bimanual robot could drive around, pick up totes, put totes down, fill totes, empty totes. It sounds simple, but when you start getting to the weeds, when you go into these warehouse factories, like a perfect example of this, a couple of use cases we're working with our customers on. You get pallets of goods come into your factory from a supplier. They're like metal parts or something. They're all in hundreds of totes. Someone at the moment manually puts that into a trolley, pushes it to a conveyor belt, then unloads it so it goes off into the automated factory. It's like, can we do that end to end? Can we take totes, put them onto a trolley, push it to a conveyor belt, and then unload them all, and then stack them in a corner? They're, 10, 20,000 units. And some of the other ones, for example, a dishwasher factory we're working with, they have like a fancy high-tech stamping line. These parts come out, then a person literally picks them up off a conveyor belt, walks 5 meters, puts them on a hook that goes through a powder coating rig. It's like, can you just automate this? You could have done this 5 years ago, but then you would have had to like hand code all these behavior trees. If something changes, you'd have to come in and keep on modifying it. Now the dream is, can you actually tally up the robot? So take the stamping one. Can you tally up the robot, pick it up using a human operator, put it on the hook, do that 100 times, press go. Takes an hour to save or make that model, and then it just does it. That is the dream. We're getting quite close to that at the moment. We could train the robot to pick up and manipulate parts and put them into a tote, but that whole end-to-end system is probably a couple of months away from being able to deploy and do an 8-hour shift.
I mean, thanks for clarifying this, especially if we see videos like the one from Figure a few days ago, where they are raising the table while it was folding, I think something. So being able to still continue working even though when the environment changes. But so you have this kind of fancy videos, but then as you are very close to the actual reality, I mean, just your company, but I think you guys are pretty good at what you guys do. That we are still there is a gap between what we see in videos and what we see in pitch decks and what is actually happening on the shop floor level, right?
Well, yeah, because the classic one is Figure, I think, is a very good company, and so is Physical Intelligence. But as a roboticist who's done this for 20 years, if you look, for example, at Physical Intelligence when they're doing their kitchen demo, I've never seen a kitchen that tidy. And it's like white countertops with a single plate, you like pass me the plate. Wait until it goes to the house. There's like 50 plates all piled up, and they're all different colors, and or even the folding the sheets. Every time you see a demo doing that, there's nothing else on the table. Maybe if you have a robot in the home, there will be no clutter, but that's no home I've ever seen.
Mm, mm, mm. Thanks for giving a refreshing picture on this topic. The you were already talking about where you are with customers and what kind of use cases you're aiming at, but and you also gave a little glimpse into what you guys are aiming at. If we would talk to each other in a year's time, where do you guys think you are?
Yeah, we want to ship, about 100 robots and just have them doing. We have about 20 customers and having these robots just over there. Our attitude is we're not really aiming for the next couple of years to be like this Amazon style warehouse or factory where it's completely lights out. We found so many brownfield sites. One of our customers has no robotics. It's like, can we go and do 60 to 70% of those tasks with a single model? You're palletizing, depalletizing, driving around, picking stuff off shelves, packaging them, shipping them. Like for some of the stuff you could never do with classical controls, that is even proving very hard for teleoff. Is like, can you peel a label off a printing machine and put it on the correct place on a box? Sounds easy. Turns out it's even hard for a teleoperator to do. These are sorts of tasks that we need to solve for the next few years. So you can go into these drop shipping warehouse or just general warehousing and, do 60, 70% of the tasks.
Quite exciting, and especially the you guys are based in Europe, right? So,
Yes.
are you a European company?
Well, no, we're an American company. It's a hybrid. Get the American money, employ Europeans.
Hmm. Thanks for being so frank and thanks for giving so many insights, not only in what you guys are doing, which is very interesting, but also in how we get to this point, right? The podcast is about lessons to be learned for people in technology, lessons for people in business, and especially for people who would like to use their technology to get into business.
Love it. It was lovely. I love it. Thank you.
Looking forward to see you in real life. Where are you based?
I spend half my time in San Francisco, half my time at Bristol in the UK.
Mm-mm. Yeah, whenever you're here in south of Germany or in Switzerland, in Zurich, let me know. I would like to have a beer with you.
Definitely. And I love beer.
Take care and enjoy the day.
Perfect. Bye.
Bye bye.